The night my son-in-law crossed the line, I realized love can blind you more than hate ever could. That's how it began, not with shouting, not with breaking glass, but with silence so heavy it pressed against the walls of my house. I still remember the way the clock ticked that night. Each second stretched longer than the last. Your mother, my daughter, was in the kitchen, her voice trembling as she tried to keep it together. And he, your father, sat across the table, calm, collected, as if he owned the silence too. I wish I'd said something sooner. I wish I'd known what was coming, but when you love someone your child loves, you start ignoring the things that make your heart uneasy. "Ma, please don't say anything tonight," your mother whispered to me earlier that evening. "Why?" I'd asked. "Because he's tired. He's been under stress. Stress. That word. We used it so often it lost its meaning. It became a cover, a blanket we threw over things that didn't fit right. That night, I'd made dinner, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, a small salad, the way he liked it. I thought maybe, if the house felt warm and calm, maybe they'd talk. Maybe they'd find their way back to each other. But love doesn't work like that. It doesn't heal in candlelight. He came home late. Again, the door slammed, heavy boots on the floor, that smell of alcohol that always followed him lately. I didn't say anything at first, but when he walked past the table without even looking at her, I caught your mother's eyes. She looked so small that night, not physically. Your mother was always graceful, strong, but small in spirit, like something inside her had been chipped away bit by bit. "Dinner's ready," I said, softly, and He didn't answer, just walked straight to the living room and turned on the TV. The volume filled the silence, and that's when I realized how long it had been since laughter had filled that space. Your mother followed him, her voice quiet but firm. "We need to talk, Mark." He didn't look at her. Not now. Now?" she said, more certain this time. And that's when the tension began to rise, like static in the air before a storm. I stayed in the kitchen, pretending to clean, but every word cut through me. I couldn't help listening. "Why'd you go through my phone?" He snapped. "Because you've been lying to me," she said. Her voice broke halfway through, and it wasn't anger, it was pain. He laughed. "Lying? Or just not telling you things that are none of your business? Your late nights, your messages, you think I'm stupid?" I heard a thud, his hand on the wall maybe, and my heart leapt into my throat. I turned around and walked toward the doorway, but stopped. There's a kind of fear that paralyzes you, the fear of knowing too much, of seeing something you can never unsee. When I finally gathered the courage to step in, they both turned toward me. He looked furious that I was there. Your mother's eyes pleaded with me silently, not to take sides, not to make it worse. I just said, "It's late. You both need to rest." He laughed under his breath, that sharp kind of laugh that says you don't know what's going on here, old woman. That's when something inside me cracked. "Don't you dare disrespect her in my house," I said. The room went still. Your mother whispered, "Ma, please." And then he turned to her, his face twisted with something darker than anger. "You told her everything, didn't you?" She shook her head quickly, tears starting to fall. No, I didn't, but he didn't believe her. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows shook. I can still feel that vibration in my chest sometimes when I think about it. Your mother fell apart that night. I held her the way I used to when she was little. She kept repeating the same words. "He's not who I thought he was." And I didn't know what to say. I wanted to tell her to leave him. I wanted to tell her I'd seen this coming months ago. The way he'd pull away, the way he'd talk down to her, the way his smile stopped reaching his eyes. But love, especially the kind that's built on years of compromise, doesn't end with logic. It ends with exhaustion. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window, the lamp glowing faintly beside me, and watched the streetlight flicker across the driveway. His car was still gone. The house was too quiet. And that's when I thought about your grandfather. My Henry, he was the opposite of Mark. Gentle, patient. Never once raised his voice at me in 40 years of marriage. But I also remembered the nights I cried silently, when Henry worked late, when I thought maybe he didn't love me the same way anymore. We survived because we talked. We faced each other's shadows. That's what love used to mean to me, not just warmth but courage. When the front door finally opened, it was past 3 a.m. He came in quietly, pretending not to notice me sitting there. His eyes were red, his hands shaking slightly. I could smell the whiskey from across the room. Well, do you have any idea what time it is? I asked. He just muttered, "I'm not here to talk, Eleanor. You're in my house. You will talk." He sighed, dragging a hand over his face. "You think I wanted this? You think I planned for everything to fall apart?" "I think you hurt my daughter," I said quietly. "And you don't even seem sorry." His expression hardened. "She's not perfect, you know. She... Don't you dare," I cut in. "Don't you dare blame her for your choices." He looked at me for a long time, eyes glassy like he was fighting something inside. Then he said something that chilled me. "She's not the only one keeping secrets, Eleanor. You should know that." And then he walked away, up the stairs, leaving me frozen. What secrets? What secrets? I sat there until sunrise, replaying his words. I didn't want to believe him, but I knew that tone. It was the tone of someone who had leverage, someone who knew something. The next morning, your mother avoided my eyes. She moved around the kitchen like a ghost. I asked her what he meant, but she shook her head. "He's just trying to scare you." But I saw it, that flicker of guilt, that hesitation. Something was buried beneath that marriage, something neither of them wanted to name, something neither of them wanted to. That's when I realized the truth I'd been running from. Families don't fall apart all at once. They crack quietly, over time, until one night the pieces stop fitting together. I looked at my daughter, at the girl I raised, the woman I thought I knew, and I saw fear in her eyes, Not just fear of losing him, but fear of what I might find if I kept digging. I didn't know it then, but that night was only the beginning. The night my son-in-law crossed the line wasn't about shouting or hitting, it was about power, the kind that hides behind charm and apologies. And love, real love, can blind you so deeply, you'll protect the very person destroying you. I remember standing in the garden that evening, the air heavy with rain. Your mother was upstairs, doors closed, curtains drawn. I could hear faint sobbing. I wanted to run in, to hold her again, but part of me felt helpless. I'd raised her to be strong, to speak her truth, yet here she was, broken by a man who once made her laugh until she cried. The first drops of rain hit my hands, cool and soft. I looked up at the sky and whispered, "Henry, if you can hear me, tell me what to do." But the only answer was thunder in the distance. That was the night everything began to unravel, and in the days that followed, I would learn just how deep those secrets went. Secrets that didn't belong only to them, but to our entire family. The next few days felt like walking through fog. Your mother barely spoke. Your son-in-law, Mark, pretended everything was fine. "He's already decided who he is." She looked up, and for the first time, her voice hardened. "You think I don't know that? You think I haven't tried?" We stood there, staring at each other, two women separated by generations, but trapped in the same cycle of love and denial. "We have the kids to think about," she whispered finally. "If I leave, where do I go? What do I tell them? That their father is a thief? A liar?" I didn't have an answer, because when you're a mother, every choice feels like the wrong one. A week passed, then another. I thought maybe things had settled. The bruises faded. The tension softened. He even started bringing her flowers again. For a while, I let myself believe it was over, until one night, your mother came home alone. Her hands were shaking. She sat down at the kitchen table and stared at nothing for a long time. "Ma," she said finally, "there's something I need to tell you." Her voice was so small it broke my heart. "What is it, darling?" She hesitated, then pulled out her phone. Her phone. She showed me a photo, blurry, taken through a car window. It was Mark with another woman. Younger, smiling, his hand on hers. I felt the air leave my lungs. "I followed him today," she whispered. "I just needed to know. I didn't know what to say." I wanted to comfort her, but all I could feel was rage. "He's been seeing her for months," she continued. "And when I confronted him last week, he said I was imagining things." I reached across the table, holding her hand. "You're not imagining anything. He's destroying you, Emily. Emily?" And I can't stand by anymore. Her tears fell silently. "What if he takes the kids from me, Ma?" That's when I saw the real fear, not of him, but of losing everything she'd built her life around. "Then we fight?" I said. "It together." She looked at me for a long time, then nodded. For the first time in months, I saw a flicker of resolve in her eyes. The next day, I called an old friend of mine, Richard, a retired attorney who'd helped families in situations like this. I didn't tell him everything, just enough. He said he'd look into it discreetly. But before anything could move forward, something happened that none of us expected. 3 days later, when I came home from running errands, the house was silent again, too silent. Your mother's car was in the driveway. I called her name, no answer. I walked inside, heart pounding. Then I heard it, the sound of muffled sobs from the living room. She was sitting on the floor, papers scattered around her, her face pale. He knows, she whispered when she saw me. He knows I went to a lawyer. My stomach dropped. How? He found the business card in my purse. He said if I ever tried to take the kids or the money, She stopped herself, shaking her head. He's not the man I thought he was, Ma. I knelt beside her, holding her face in my hands. And then listen to me. You need to leave. Tonight. Take the kids. Come with me. We'll go somewhere safe. They'll go somewhere safe. She looked terrified. If I leave now, he'll find us. Then we make sure he can't. For a long moment, she just stared at me, torn between fear and hope. Then she nodded slowly. That was the night we packed our bags in silence. The kids were asleep upstairs. I remember tucking them in, brushing their hair, praying they wouldn't wake up. When we stepped outside, the rain had just started to fall. I held her hand as we walked to the car, both of us shaking. But just as she opened the door, headlights appeared at the end of the street. His car. She froze. I'll go, I whispered. Get in. The lights grew closer. She hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. The car stopped right behind ours. The door slammed, and before either of us could move, he was standing there in the rain, eyes dark and unreadable. Going somewhere, he said softly. And that's when I knew. The line he crossed that night wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about control, about fear, Mark revealed the long-hidden truth about your mother's biological father. A part of our family history so carefully hidden, I had believed it had been forgotten. I sat there in the rain, stunned as he laid out names, dates, letters, and evidence. A puzzle I had no memory of building, but had been a silent part of my life. You see, he said, her father, the man she thought she knew, he did terrible things, and your family covered for him. Eleanor. To protect yourselves, you buried it. But some things can't stay buried forever. Your mother shook, tears mixing with rain. "Ma," she whispered. I wanted to scream at Mark, to shake him, to demand he stop. But inside, a strange clarity emerged. The rage, the fear, the betrayal, it all settled into understanding. He hadn't crossed the line for selfish reasons entirely. He crossed it to expose a hidden truth that could no longer remain hidden. And I realized something terrifying. I had loved blindly. I had believed in the sanctity of my family, ignoring shadows and whispers, excusing behavior that didn't make sense. The rain softened. A pause fell over the street. Mark stepped back, eyes wet, almost human. "You can hate me," he said. "You can leave, take your daughter and your grandchildren and walk away. Or you can listen and finally see the truth." I felt the weight of generations pressing down on me, the legacy of lies, the burden of love and betrayal intertwined. I took a deep breath and said, "We'll listen." But only because we need to hear it. Only because silence has cost too much already. And that's when he handed me the letters. A collection of confessions, apologies, and untold stories from my own family. Stories that painted people I had loved in shades I had never imagined. Your mother cried openly, her hands shaking as she held the letters. I did too. We spent hours reading, sorting through decades of secrets, realizing that sometimes the people we think we know are not the people they appear to be. By dawn, the storm had passed. The rain left the air smelling fresh, almost like forgiveness. Mark left quietly without argument, leaving us with the weight of truth and the relief of survival. We sat together at the kitchen table, drenched, exhausted, but alive. And for the first time in a long time, I saw my daughter's face, not scared, not broken, but resolute. "I can't undo the past," she said quietly. "But I can protect my kids from it. From him, from the lies." I nodded. "And you will. That's what matters now. The letters lay on the table between us, evidence of pain, mistakes, and courage. We didn't need to burn them, hide them, or ignore them. We needed to face them, to see the past clearly even if it hurt, because that's how healing begins, not with denial, but with truth. I realized then that love isn't just warmth and comfort, it's courage. It's facing shadows you'd rather ignore. It's protecting the people you love, even when it means standing against the people you thought you could trust. And sometimes it's letting go of someone you thought you couldn't live without. Your mother and I stayed up all morning, reading, talking, and planning. There were decisions to make, boundaries to set, and a life to reclaim. I watched her face in the soft morning light, and I understood that the woman she was becoming, strong, careful, and aware, had always been there. The line had just been crossed, revealing her true resilience. The days that followed felt both heavy and strangely light. Heavy because the truth we uncovered had shaken everything we thought we knew about our family, about trust, about love. But light, too, because finally, the secrets were out in the open. The shadows couldn't hide anymore. We moved slowly. Your mother stayed home with the children, and I helped her unpack the emotional weight she had been carrying for years. Every night we sat together at the kitchen table, the letters and papers spread out like a map of our history, and talked, not just about the facts, but about feelings, anger, sorrow, fear, regret. And the hardest part was watching her grapple with the duality of love and betrayal. How could someone you loved be capable of causing such pain? How could someone you trusted conceal truths that shaped your life without your knowing? I reminded her gently, as I had countless times before, Emily, it's not your fault. You loved him as any good heart would. Nah, as any good heart would. You saw the best in him, and that's not a crime. She nodded, but her eyes told me she needed more than words. She needed action, and so we began to rebuild, slowly, cautiously, carefully, a life that belonged to her and to her children alone. Mark disappeared from our lives after that day. He tried calling once, left a message that I refused to listen to, and that was the last we heard. I didn't hate him. I couldn't. He had hurt us, yes, and manipulated and frightened, but in some strange way he also revealed a truth that had been festering quietly, a secret that could no longer stay buried. In a strange, painful sense, he forced us to see clearly. And sometimes, clarity comes wrapped in betrayal. Your mother and I spent the next weeks organizing, locking away the papers that needed to be kept for reference, discarding the ones that held no value beyond memory. We told the children small pieces of the truth, carefully, selectively, because they were young, and innocence is a fragile gift. Then we protected them from the darkness that had once nearly swallowed their mother whole. And in doing so, I realized something vital. Protection doesn't always mean sheltering someone from life's harshness. Sometimes it means facing it together, surviving it, and teaching resilience. One evening after the children had gone to bed, your mother and I sat on the porch sipping tea. The air smelled faintly of rain, earth, and something unspoken. Hope maybe, or simply relief. I don't know if I can ever trust anyone again, she whispered. I took her hand. A trust isn't given lightly, Emily. You rebuild it slowly. Start with yourself. Then with those who prove themselves. And remember, love doesn't mean blind devotion. It means respect, honesty, courage. She leaned into me. I don't want to make the same mistakes as my parents did. Then you won't, I said. Because you've learned what it feels like to be deceived, to be silenced, and to be betrayed. And now, you know what to look for. You know when a line is crossed. There was silence, and in that quiet, I understood that we were both thinking the same thing. The past could no longer define us. The next morning, I took the children into the garden. We planted bulbs for spring, daffodils, tulips, and hyacinths. I wanted them to see that even after the harshest winter, life could bloom again. "Ma," your daughter said, tugging at my sleeve, "will they grow?" I smiled, brushing soil from her hands. "Of course, darling. They just need time, care, and a little patience, just like people." It struck me then that the garden wasn't just a metaphor. It was life. Pain, betrayal, fear, all these things were part of the soil we stand on. And yet, even in that soil, beauty could grow. Even in our wounds, hope could take root. Weeks turned into months. And your mother grew stronger with each passing day. She laughed more freely. She started talking about plans for the future, for the children, for herself. I watched her with pride, knowing she had survived something I could never have prepared her for completely. And I thought about myself. About the years I had lived thinking love was enough. That family meant loyalty no matter what. About the night Mark crossed that line and how it had changed everything. I realized something essential. Love can blind you, yes, but love can also give you vision. If you listen closely, if you trust your instincts, if you have courage, love can be the lens through which you see truth clearly. One evening, I found a quiet moment alone in the house. I sat in the living room, hands folded, and let the memories wash over me. The laughter, the tears, the long nights of worry, the hidden letters, the confrontation in the rain. I understood finally that life isn't about perfection. It's about resilience, about holding on when the ground shakes beneath you, about teaching the next generation to stand tall, even when shadows linger. I whispered a promise to myself and to them. I will keep our family safe, not by hiding the past, but by learning from it. By seeing clearly and guiding them toward the light, even when the path is hard. That night, when the children were asleep and your mother had gone to her room, I opened the window. The stars were out, bright and countless, scattered across the sky like tiny sparks of hope. I breathed in the cool night air, feeling it settle into my bones. And I knew in that moment that everything we had endured, the betrayal, the secrets, the fear, had led us here. To clarity, to survival, to a place where love was no longer blind. And I understood with a deep certainty what I needed to leave as a legacy. Love fiercely, yes. Protect the people you care for, absolutely. But never let love blind you to truth. Face the shadows. Speak the truths that need saying. And remember, sometimes the hardest thing you can do is act with courage when the world expects silence. I leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes, feeling the gentle hum of the house around me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Because even after betrayal, even after fear, life blooms again.